Good morning, everybody. Are you glad to be here? Yes. You know, and those of you in the back, find your seats. Come on in. Let's get started. But if you were here last week, you probably thought that maybe it was a mirage. You know, because you've been not here for the last year and a half or so, but now you're back and it is real. So pinch yourselves, and it's not a dream, it's not a mirage, whatever else. So anyhow, I'd like to take this first moment to remind you that your announcements are in your printed order. Oh, wait a minute, by the way, another announcement first. I have a jacket. It's over there. Is that okay? Nobody mind? Okay. Anyhow, read your announcements that are in your order of service that you have there. And be sure and read the weekly events that you get sent on Thursday from the e-blast. Read the website that Liz, raise your hand, Liz. Liz is the web. We couldn't decide whether to call her mistress or master, whatever, but anyhow, Liz does that, so she does a great job. So I urge you to visit our website because everything that we are doing is posted on there. And I even recommend that you keep your, I can do this. That you keep your, the website browser open, even on your browser all the time, just so you can keep up with us. Now, please remember that this service is being streamed on YouTube. There won't be many of you caught on that, but also remember that even though we are not in quarantine, we still practice social distancing, and we wear masks because these are the guidelines that we have established and that you have heard and read entirely too many times. Excuse me, David told me how this goes over. If I don't go over the right ear, I won't make it right. But anyhow, I want to introduce you to David. See the guy standing up in the back in here with the flower t-shirt? This is the guy who miraculously has made this new sound system work. Give him a round of applause, please. Actually, the sound system was ready, or almost ready, about a year ago when we went into pandemic mode, and he's kept up with it, and now not only has he coordinated with the microphones, he's added increased range for our Wi-Fi, so done a lot of work with that. Today's flowers, if you see the flowers up here, today's flowers are the gift of Beverly Brown in memory of her loving, big-hearted, beloved mother-in-law, Marion Brown, who died on February 28th of this year. Marion's 100th birthday would have been in December of this year. So we thank her for the flowers, and we extend our sympathies for the loss of her mother. And now let's set ourselves for today's service. Remember to silence all electronic devices. And now the gathering music, Anna and Karen.
It's my pleasure to introduce violist Karen Peters. We're going to begin with the second movement from Marcello's Sonata in G major.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Karen. Now, please stand and join me in the congregational covenant as found in your order of service. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. Quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in freedom, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve others in community. Thus do we covenant with one another. Thank you. Please be seated. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Columbia. My name is Richard McLeod, and I am the service leader of the day. Our regular minister, Reverend Stephen Robinson, is usually in the pulpit, but on those Sundays when Stephen is not in the pulpit, we present a variety of qualified and interesting speakers, either from this congregation or from the wider community. So you'll have to keep returning to see what exciting things happen next. Unitarian Universalism is a diverse and non-creedal religion. We are a covenantal religion, which means that we don't have to believe the same in order to treat each other the same, with respect, equity, compassion, and dignity. Our community is based on deeds, not creeds. As Unitarian Universalists, we side with love, embracing all people regardless of age, color, race, socioeconomic status, physical ability, or religious background. We are a welcoming congregation, which means that we also embrace LGBTQ individuals. We encourage everybody to wear name tags so we may know each other better. Board members, when they get them assigned here, board members will wear green tags, and they will always welcome your comments, questions, or suggestions. Board members, those of you who are here today, would you stand so you can be recognized? Board members? Okay. Good. Thank you. Now, at this time, we would like to welcome any guests or visitors that are with us today. So if you are willing and able, please stand and tell us what your name is, where you're from, anything else important about yourselves. Phil will come around with the microphone, so wait for him.
Hello, I'm Stephanie Wise. I'm from St. Augustine, Florida.
Yeah. Welcome, Stephanie. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, well, thank you, Phil. As we get further along in our recovery, this is the time when we will all stand and greet each other, but we're not going to do that today. And then I will say, after you've greeted each other, I will say, hang around a little bit after the service and go to the back for social hall for refreshments and conversations. So that will happen pretty soon, we hope. But until then, just enjoy each other outside after the service. It's time to light the chalice. So Phil will do that for us. The flame of this chalice has been out too many long and lonely months in this sanctuary. But we're looking forward to, in later times, having chalice lighters. We light this chalice, a symbol of Unitarian Universalism. Its base represents our history and living tradition. The bowl represents all truth seekers and justice makers. And the flame provides the transformative power of love. Spirit of life and light, come unto us.
As we continue in our return to in-person and hybrid services, we'll be moving gradually back towards congregational singing. But in the meantime, I invite you to enjoy instrumental selections and vocal selections performed by soloists. This is Every Night and Every Morn. The words are by William Blake. The music is by Rafe Vaughan Williams.
That was beautiful. Thank you, Anna, Karen. Our guest speaker today is Dr. Jessica Kross. She has been a member of this congregation for 45 years. She is a retired USC professor of history and has practiced Vipassana, a form of Theravada Buddhism, for some 35 years. She is one of the lay leaders of the Insight Meditation Community of Columbia, which meets on Monday night, either on Zoom or in our library. Jessica.
My late husband called me vertically challenged. This is from the Nidana Sutta. A person, unknowing, the actions performed by him born of greed, born of aversion, and born of delusion, whether many or few, are experienced right here. No other ground is found. So a monk, knowing, sheds greed, aversion, and delusion, giving rise to clear knowledge, he sheds all bad destinations. And we had a story for all ages, but we don't have children, but we have all ages. Well, one child or two children. Why don't the children stay where they are? I will stay up here, and we will have our story for all ages from here. And the story today is called The Garden, and it's from the Sufi. And part of the Sufi tradition is a wise fool whose name is Mullah Nasruddin. And Mullah Nasruddin teaches us, sometimes because even though he's a fool, he says wise things, and sometimes because he's a fool and he does ridiculous things, and the message is, don't do this. So this is the garden. So Mullah Nasruddin wants to have a garden. So how many of you have a garden? I have a garden. How many of you want to have a garden but haven't quite gotten around to it yet? There we go. And so Mullah Nasruddin is tending his garden, and any of you who have a garden know that it is an endless task. You turn around, and in the South, especially vines, often many with thorns, like to just spring up overnight. You pulled them up yesterday, and here they are again. And Mullah Nasruddin realized that his garden was really sort of a mess, and he was very, very unhappy about it. And he went to the local coffee house and was talking to his friends, and he said, I just don't know what to do about this thing. I can't seem to get it in any kind of order. And they said, Mullah, there's a man in the next town, and he's a wonderful gardener, and you should go and ask his advice. And Nasruddin said, that seems like a good idea. And so he takes himself over to the next town, and he finds this man. And this man has a garden, and it looks perfectly okay. It has all sorts of things in it he doesn't recognize. And he says, I understand you're a master gardener. What is the secret? And the master gardener looks at him and he says, love the weeds. And that is our story for all ages.
Excited to move into the CYR even.
It's now time for our candles of community. If you have a personal joy, sorrow, or concern that you would like to have shared from this pulpit, please let Andrea, our administrator, know by noon Friday. If you would like to speak for yourself, how it works is that as you come in the front door, There's a basket with candles in it. Take one of those, and then when I call for you, you can come up and light the candle and speak for yourself. So, our first candle is from Jean Capalbo and Craig Chatton, who light a candle for their beloved dog, Willie, who died on Tuesday of this week. He was a sweet and loving dog and a full member of their little family. Now, will those of you who have taken the candle please come forward, use the microphone, and talk about your special joy or concern. Let's see, Bruce.
First of all, I want to say thank you to everyone for cards, well wishes, things for myself and Nicholas. It's an ongoing task. He's in remission, but he has to take chemotherapy at home every day for the rest of his life until he chooses to stop. And everyone knows what that means. And this is kind of a twofer. On a lighter note, which is not that lighter, like this for our cat, one of our cats, Neelix, who is in the hospital, vet hospital, of course, and hopefully can come home today. But thank you all, and positive energy is always appreciated. And Nick actually did really enjoy those cards everyone sent. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Bruce. Deb.
I would like to light a candle and thank everyone who sent sympathy and warm wishes. My mother passed away on June 24th, and the outpouring of love was wonderful, and I really appreciate all she passed away very peacefully, but it was very helpful to hear from everyone. Thank you.
Anybody else have a candle? We light one final candle for those joys and concerns that may be too deep or too private to mention. That remain in our hearts. Okay, time for sharing our abundance. This congregation contributes to Share the Plate, where half of our cash collection on Sunday goes to local charities, which is a way for us to give back to the community we live in. This month's Share the Plate recipient is the South Carolina Women's Rights and Empowerment Network, a movement advancing the health, economic well-being, and rights of South Carolina's women, girls, and their families. Today we have Ann Warner here to tell us a little bit more about what they do. Ann?
Good morning. It's really nice to be with you all. I've been to this congregation as a visitor before, and it's just nice to be back in community with other people who care about this community, what's happening, and what must happen to make it a more welcoming and inclusive place for all who live in South Carolina. And that's what REN does. We are a statewide, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization with a mission to build a movement to advance the health, economic well-being, and rights of women, girls, and gender-expansive people across our state. And we do that through advocacy and education and coalition building. We launched 5 years ago, almost. We're celebrating our 5-year anniversary this fall. And it's hard to believe all that has happened during that time. We work a lot at the state level, at the policy level, to try and create policies and systems that will make our state more equitable. Our movement is 40,000 and growing, and we are constantly looking to bring new people into our nest and to increase the ways that we can reach and engage people. We're a small team, and so we really rely on the advocacy, participation, and engagement of our communities around the state, and we look to folks like you to help us bridge into communities who know best what is needed to ensure that women, girls, and gender-expansive people are able to thrive in South Carolina. A couple of the issues that we work on are reproductive freedom and economic dignity and justice. And if you have paid attention to politics and what's happening at the State House this year, it's been a tough year. We've had a lot of focus on efforts to take away bodily autonomy from women, from our LGBTQ plus community, including from trans kids. It's been a tough year, but it's also been a year of great hope because we've seen our community come out even during a pandemic in these beautiful ways to speak up and mobilize and work together and to help, turn this what can seem like very negative moments into extremely positive glimmers of hope and opportunity for building a state that's welcoming for all. And as we go into our 5th year, our emphasis is really going to be on building the engagement and advocacy capacity of organizations and individuals across the state. We're going to be launching some new initiatives to help provide training and technical assistance, both to individual people who want to be more involved, as well as to organizations, grassroots partners, because again, this has to be a movement that is owned and shaped and led by people. And our role is going to be to try and create programs and opportunities that bring those to more people. And so we'll be sharing a lot more information about those programs in the months ahead. I invite you to reach out to me directly, to any of my colleagues. If you have a particular group that wants to be trained or wants to get more involved in advocacy work in South Carolina. We have a lot of different ways of making that more accessible. And also to go to our website, you can go on your phone to scwren.org and sign up to be part of our network. You can put in your email address and your phone number. I promise we don't completely inundate and overwhelm you, but we do try to keep people updated on what's happening and how they can get involved. Also follow us on social media. I have a very talented social media team, not me, but really creative people who are doing good work and sharing a lot of information about how to get more involved. This is going to be a big year for us and for the movement for social justice in South Carolina. And as we come out of the pandemic, hopefully, and re-engage, we are really, really excited to find new ways to partner. And we look forward to working with this community, which has always been so welcoming to us and so generous. And we want to work with you all. So I hope you'll consider me an extended member of this congregation and community. Again, my name is Ann Warner, and I look forward to speaking with some of you afterwards and continuing to get to know you. My colleague Courtney Thomas will be here next week, and we're really grateful for all the ways that this congregation uplifts and supports our community. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Ann. If you're paying by check, share the plate on the memo line when you put it in the basket. Or if you want to make a contribution online, you can also do that. Just go to our website and there's a place that says donate, and you can designate that for share the plate. Will our ushers please come forward?
This morning's offertory selection is the Arioso from Cantata number 156 by Bach.
Thank you, Karen. And special thanks to Professor Johann Bach for that piece. About the offering, we receive these gifts with gratitude and appreciation as it demonstrates that we are truly a giving community. Jessica.
Well, let me begin by saying that standing here, as I have for many, many years, is a privilege and an exceptionally great joy. I love doing this. I hope you love hearing me. But without you, there would be no way that I could do this. So, my deepest thanks. I try to use my own experience as the basis for my Buddhist talks, and today is no exception. So I'm going to need a hip replacement, and I'm limping around. I was showing my significant other the problem of lifting my leg, and he asked me whether I couldn't lift it, or was it just painful to lift it? Can't or won't. In recent thinking about can't or won't, I realized that there are at least two aspects to the question. The first is the more immediate problem of behavior and reactions. The second problem is existential and has to do with our being human. My late husband, John Gallant, he was a member of this congregation back in the day, and he and I met here, actually, in 1975 when I first came to Columbia. Some of you will remember him. He was a wonderful man. He was really smart. He was valedictorian at University High here, and then went on to MIT for a degree in electrical engineering. He was an honors student there, came back here for a graduate degree in engineering and an MBA. He had a great sense of humor. He had a great sense of adventure. He was well organized and logical. Engineers tend to be that way. For every appliance or tool that he had bought, he created a separate labeled file in which he put the instructions and the sales receipt. I would like to claim that I am so well organized, but it would not be true. He did our taxes. But John also was one of the losers in the genetic lottery. In 1995, he was diagnosed with primary progressive multiple sclerosis. And the next year, he was forced into disability retirement. By 1999, he needed a wheelchair, and in 2003, he became completely dependent on it, unable to stand or even turn over in bed. His problems with weight led to diabetes, his left side gradually paralyzed, and he became increasingly unable to help himself, even in a wheelchair. We hired help and managed to keep him home. He died in 2008. I began a Buddhist practice actually in 1984, and so had 10 years or so under my belt when all of this was diagnosed. I would like to say that I was the perfect helpmeet and companion, but such would be untrue. One of our problems was that we wanted reality to be otherwise, and we colluded in shading the difference between can't and won't. It works this way. If I won't do something, it means that I have made a choice, had a choice. But at some future time, I could make another choice. I'll use the example of the income taxes. It's now April 1st, and I'm concerned that I haven't been asked for anything. No W-2s, no charitable deduction lists. I'm told it's okay. We'll just get an extension. John was always a procrastinator, and I am not willing to go down this particular road, and so I begin to insist that we start. And generous person that I am, I offer to help. It turns out that the formerly immaculate record keeping has fallen on hard times. Now all the forms and financial records have been put on a large box top. And when it overflows, it gets replaced by another large box top. Many of the mailings have never been opened. John insists it's all okay and he'll do fine. I get mad, he digs in, and you can all see where this is going. Since the beginning of this health odyssey, John has refused to admit that he cannot do things. He does not want to admit the can't, for if won't means there is a choice, can't forces the reality that there is no choice. He doesn't want that reality, and neither do I. Both sides are in unconscious collusion with the fantasy. Can't means facing that other steps must be taken if life is to go on in some sort of safe and reasonable way. Can't means accepting the disability and the degeneration. Can't means that some future plans are never going to happen. Can't means grieving the life or the possibilities that will never be. One of our better coping strategies was to use a counselor who was kind enough to come to us. Not personally invested in can'ts and won'ts, she was able to persuade him to allow us to hire people and to buy equipment to do what he could no longer do, which would come to include getting in and out of his bed, of his chair, bathing, using the toilet, dressing, and anything else that required more than the one hand he could use the last 3 or 4 years. We went from once a day to 4 times a day, and for years had 2 people coming in. I or a family member or a friend was there at night. I would like to say that my insights about can't and won't helped our relationship and my anxiety and impatience, but I really came to understand all of that very late in the game. Buddhism, however, can help me see what was going on. In hindsight, unfortunately, but I offer that here. The Buddha said that his only goal, his only reason for teaching was to help his fellow humans find a way to end their suffering. The Pali word is dukkha. It is often translated as dissatisfaction, which is both broader and less charged than suffering. I prefer dissatisfaction. We have all known dissatisfaction. We can alleviate our dissatisfaction through an understanding of the Four Noble Truths. The first is that being human means we will be dissatisfied, unhappy at times, weighed down. It's part of the human condition. The second noble truth tells us that the cause of our suffering is greed, hatred, and delusion, 1, 2, or 3, separately or together. The third noble truth is that there is a way out of this. And the fourth is that the way out lies in following the behaviors of the Noble Eightfold Path. For this talk, however, I want to concentrate on the second noble truth: greed, hatred, and delusion. We want what we want when we want it. We want our experience to be different from what it is, and so we are dissatisfied. It is clear that John and I wanted our experience to be different from what it was. Greed can also be thought of as wanting something. He wanted to regain mobility, and I wanted him less dependent. As his horizons narrowed, I withdrew, since there really was less room for me or anybody else. One of the effects of aging and illness is less mental and physical energy to spend outside the full-time job of keeping oneself going. You might have had this experience with elderly parents who, having gone from people interested in everything, can barely string 3 words together to greet you. It's not their fault. We lived in the same house and cared about one another, but there was little sharing of an interior life, can't and won't. If another won't do something, we try to change their behavior. We get angry. We sulk. Hatred can also be thought of as the second leg of the dukkha stool. It can mean not wanting, pushing away the current situation. There's always tomorrow. We can get an extension from the IRS. In a relationship, there is withdrawal. John recreated his physical environment to make it easier for him, but harder for everyone else. There was no comfortable chair in his room. The computer, TV, stereo, all were within his sight lines, but nobody else's. As long as he could keep these outside stimuli going, he could feel he was in control. And to a certain extent, he was, but at other costs. Were they considered? Can't and won't. Finally, the third leg of the dukkha stool is ignorance, delusion. John handled his disability well most of the time, even if some of his good humor was based on delusion. John always thought he would get better. He convinced himself most of the time that setbacks were temporary. He would get to the taxes tomorrow or next week. The increasing disarray around him would get sorted out tomorrow or next week. Can't and won't. There is a second dimension to can't and won't, which involves the existential truth that we are humans and thus by definition imperfect. Many religions, including forms of Buddhism, offer some promise of perfection, either in this life or in a next life. The Dharma talks offered when I first heard them some 35 plus years ago skated around some of the traditional teachings and interpretations about karma and reincarnation, about achieving enlightenment or arriving in some way at nirvana, which was never defined but might have been a place or a mental condition. Who knew? I knew that some Tibetan sects were trying to achieve the paranormal. Lest you think such notions are long gone, 3 years ago at a New Year's retreat at the Insight Meditation Society in Massachusetts, one of the newbies asked if he could eventually learn to levitate. I never thought I could rise from my seat, but there was sort of an implicit promise that if I sat enough, concentrated enough, walked slowly enough, noted thoughts enough, I could somehow get beyond the imperfect human parts of myself that seemed beyond my control. It wasn't that I couldn't control so much of my mental/emotional life, it was that I wouldn't. These expectations, with their undertow of perfectionism, are now being questioned. The first noble truth is being rethought. Not so much that life is dissatisfaction as we are human, and therefore much will be out of our control. As the famous poster of a loincloth Maharishi surfing says, we might not be able to control the waves, but we can learn to surf. What does it mean to surf in this context of can't and won't? We can't keep our thoughts and emotions from arising, but we can see them for what they are, and if needed, postpone them, manage them, until we are freer to be with them in all their magnificence or terror. It isn't that we won't be free of their arising, it is that being human, we can't be free from their arising. But postponing dealing with them can be a useful and compassionate response. Joseph Goldstein, a well-respected American insight teacher, was asked about repetitive thoughts. His advice: gently tell them that now was not the time, and they would be gotten back to later. My experience is that later often can mean gentler, softer, without so much emotional edge. But that isn't always the case, and I know that. To conclude, anybody who has cared for another, be it a pet, a child, a parent, a spouse, oneself, knows that patience is limited and that even knowing that the other isn't able to do something can't always head off anger. We are humans and need to tailor our expectations of ourselves to take in that truth. Perfections isn't a case of won't, it is a case of can't. But as the Serenity Prayer reminds us, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Part of that wisdom is the difference between can't and won't. Can't has a finality to it that we don't want to accept. Can't is the wisdom to accept the things that cannot be changed, even when all parties involved don't want to do that. Thank you.
Our closing music, Be Ye Lamps Unto Yourself, has words attributed to Gautama Buddha. Jessica told me the story this morning that these are assumed to be the Buddha's last words, spoken to his followers who were lamenting by his bedside, heartbroken and not knowing what to do when he was gone or how to find their way. And he told them, "Be ye lamps unto yourselves, be your own confidence. Hold to the truth within yourselves as to the only lamp."
Before I say our closing words, I would like to thank everybody whose hard work made this possible. David, Richard, our wonderful, wonderful musicians. We really have a treasure here. This is attributed to Kalidasa. Look to this day, for it is life, the very life of life. In its brief course lie all the verities and realities of your existence, the bliss of growth, the glory of action, the splendor of beauty. For yesterday is but a dream, and tomorrow is only a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness, and every tomorrow a vision of hope. Look well, therefore, to this day.
We extinguish this chalice at the end of our time here today. May its flame flow gently in our hearts as we leave this place until we are together again. This concludes our service. So now, take some time, some social time outside, patio that way. I think they have some chairs set up out there, out front, anywhere you like. But let's spend some time fellowshipping with one another. So glad you made it to our service today. Thank you all.